youngest religions. There are millions of Baha'is all around the world today, partially because of the unique and momentous beginning of the faith, which dates back less than 2 centuries ago. It all started in Persia, or modern-day Iran, when a young man named Mullah Hussein went in search for the Qaim, the promised one of Islam, after the death of his teacher, Sayyid Kazim. In 1844, Mullah Hussein's search led him to Shiraz. While walking outside the gates of the city, a young man greeted Mullah Hussein and invited him to accompany the young man to his house. Upon arrival, tea was served and conversation ensued through the whole night. Sayyid Kazim had given Mullah Hussein detailed indications as to the distinguishing features of the Qaim, and he mentioned them to the young man. This man, now known as the Bab, paused for a bit, and then stood up and declared, "Behold, all these signs are manifest in me." In the months following, 17 more individuals professed their belief in the Bab and became the 18 letters of the living. The Bab instructed each letter to spread throughout Persia the news of the promised Qaim's arrival. This news was not received well by the Islamic clergy, prompting the Prime Minister to order the Bab's arrest. The Bab was sent to the northwestern corner of the country, where he was imprisoned in the fortress of Maku. While confined here, he began working on the Persian Bayan, but never finished. Meanwhile, the Babi faith was spreading rapidly and had gained many followers, including important figures in society, such as Mirza Hussein Ali, better known as Baha'u'llah. Prominent figures in the Babi religion decided to hold a conference at Badasht to set in motion the further promulgation of the newly born faith. Among those figures were Baha'u'llah, who was leading the conference, and Tahirih, the 17th letter of the living, and the first woman to become a follower of the Bab. As an act of symbolism, Tahirih removed her traditional veil in front of a group of men, brandishing a sword in one hand. This unveiling caused a great commotion amongst the men, as this was a defiant act towards the cultural and religious ways of seeing a woman. Many screamed, and one man was so horrified that he sliced his own throat and fled the scene bleeding. This momentous event is considered by Baha'is as the key demonstration in the push for raising the social position of women. The Babi faith continued to grow, so in 1850, the new Prime Minister, Amir Kabir, ordered the Bab's execution. The Bab and a companion of his were to be hung in the town square of Tabriz and shot by a 750-man firing squad. When the smoke from the rifles cleared, the young follower stood completely unscathed while the Bab had disappeared. The Bab was found finishing the conversation that had been interrupted before the first round of gunfire. The Bab and the same companion were strung up in the same fashion as before. This time, their bodies were riddled with bullets and were fused into one. By this point, the Babis had attracted the attention of the Shah. The Shah ordered the de facto leader of the faith, Baha'u'llah, to be imprisoned in the Sia Chal 2 years after the martyrdom of the Bab. Baha'u'llah related some of the details of his confinement in the Sia Chal. "We were all huddled together in one cell, our feet in stocks, and around our necks fastened the most galling of chains. The air we breathed was laden with the foulest impurities, while the floor on which we sat was covered with filth and infested with vermin. No ray of light was allowed to penetrate that pestilential dungeon or to warm its icy coldness." Despite the pain, deprivation, and extreme suffering, something remarkable happened to Baha'u'llah. He saw, in a vision, the Maid of Heaven, imparting to him an inkling of his mission as the world's Redeemer and Peacemaker, the Prophet and Promised One of all religions. The Shah decided that imprisonment was not satisfactory to his wishes and sent Baha'u'llah and his family into exile to Baghdad. After about a year in Baghdad, Baha'u'llah left to the mountains of Kurdistan to live alone and to pray and meditate. Given the lack of firm leadership, the Babi community fell into disarray. Abdul Baha, Baha'u'llah's eldest son, searched for Baha'u'llah, pleading him to come back, which he did in 1856. Baha'u'llah continued to teach the Bab's teachings, all the while keeping what happened in the Sia Chal a secret. Baha'u'llah remained in the city for 7 more years, gaining more and more influence and respect. This angered the Persian government, which demanded Baha'u'llah be exiled further. Before leaving to Constantinople, Baha'u'llah camped for 12 days in the Garden of Rezvan in April of 1863. It was during this time that Baha'u'llah declared to his friends and family his station and mission as a manifestation of God. It was said that the pile of roses inside the tent was so high that one could not see the person sitting on the opposite side. Baha'is today celebrate these 12 days as the festival of Rezvan. And so, the Holy Family set out once again in further banishment. Baha'u'llah stayed in Constantinople for only 4 months due to political upheaval, before being exiled even more to Adrianople. In December of 1863, Baha'u'llah and his family were forced to walk in snow and ice on their 12-day journey. During his 4.5-year stay in Adrianople, Baha'u'llah made his claim as a manifestation of God, public through letters and tablets. Among those were a series of letters to the kings and rulers of the world, which he began writing in 1866. Those who received letters included King William of Prussia, Tsar Alexander II, Pope Pius IX, the Shah of Persia, Napoleon III, Queen Victoria, and the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. All of these letters are compiled into one book titled The Summons of the Lord of Hosts. Baha'u'llah, once again gaining influence and respect, was exiled yet again to Akka in modern-day Israel. They arrived on August 31st, 1868, after a month-long journey by land and sea. The exiles were led through the streets of Akka, while the residents spat in their faces and hurled rotting food at them. It was said that the stench of the prison city was so bad that birds would fall from the sky dead. Baha'u'llah and his family eventually arrived at their prison cell in the northwest part of the city. During Baha'u'llah's time in this prison cell, his youngest child, Mirza Mehdi, was killed suddenly at the age of 22 when he fell through a skylight while pacing on the roof in prayer and meditation. During the hours when he lay dying, he expressed to Baha'u'llah a final wish, that his death might be accepted as a sacrifice, so that the restrictions of confinement might be eased, allowing the followers of Baha'u'llah who sought to visit him the opportunity to attain his presence. Mirza Mehdi's wish was realized when the exiles were released and allowed to live in the town of Akka at the house of Aboud 4 months after Mirza Mehdi's death. It was in this house that Baha'u'llah revealed the Kitab-i Aqdas, the Book of Laws for the Bahá'í Faith, as well as countless other tablets and prayers. Baha'u'llah's eldest child, Abdul-Baha, began working on acquiring better living spaces for his father. Baha'u'llah spent several months in the Rezvan garden, just outside Akka, named after the garden in Baghdad. He then moved out to Mazrai, a town not far north of Akka, from 1877 to 1879, before Abdul-Baha was able to purchase a mansion at Bahji in the countryside north of Akka. All the while, the flow of divine revelation from the pen of Baha'u'llah never ceased. On May 9, 1892, Baha'u'llah contracted a fever, which grew until it finally took his life on May 29, 1892, at the age of 75. He was buried in a shrine located next to the mansion of Bahji by Abdul-Baha, Baha'u'llah's successor, designated as the center of the covenant. It was Abdul-Baha who was able to acquire the holy remains of the Bab and enshrine them on March 21, 1909, on Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel. Abdul-Baha personally delivered the Bahá'í teachings to the West in his journey to Europe and North America from 1910 to 1913. When World War I broke out, he personally organized agricultural preparations, averting a famine for the poor of all faiths in Haifa and Akka. The British Empire honored his service with knighthood in 1920. Abdul-Baha passed away at the age of 77 on November 28, 1921, and was laid to rest in one of the chambers of the shrine of the Bab.